The house was quiet, but not peaceful. Emily felt it the moment she stepped inside, like the air was holding its breath. Outside, autumn pressed against the windows, trees stripped thin, leaves scattered across the yard. Inside, everything looked the same as it always had. Clean counters, soft lights, a home built with care. Still something inside her shifted, sharp and sudden, like a crack forming in glass. She set her bag down slowly, as if noise itself might cause damage. Her shoulders ached from carrying more than weight. For weeks, maybe months, she had been telling herself she was fine. Busy, tired. Everyone felt this way sometimes. But that evening, the feeling didn't pass. It settled deep and refused to move. David was already home. He sat at the kitchen table, tablet in hand, glasses low on his nose. He looked calm, steady, reliable, everything he had always been. He glanced up and smiled, the same easy smile he'd worn for years. Emily tried to return it. The effort felt heavy. She walked to the sink and stared out the window. The sky was fading fast, the sun slipping behind bare branches. She noticed her reflection in the glass. The woman looking back seemed smaller somehow, as if pieces of her had quietly gone missing. David asked about her day. His voice was warm, practiced. Emily answered with short words, normal words, safe words. She talked about traffic, a meeting, nothing that mattered. He nodded, half listening, half somewhere else. That was how it had been lately, not cold, not cruel, just distant in a way that hurt more than anger ever could. Emily reached for a mug, but her hand shook. The cup rattled softly against the counter. She froze, hoping David hadn't noticed. But the sound was enough. He looked up again, this time longer. "Emily," he said, "you okay?" The question landed wrong. Not because it was unkind, but because it was late. Too late. Her chest tightened before she could stop it. She opened her mouth to say yes, but the word wouldn't come. Instead, her breath caught, sharp and uneven. She turned away, ashamed of the sudden heat behind her eyes. She had promised herself she wouldn't do this. Not tonight. Not again. But control slipped fast when it finally broke. A tear fell. Then another. David stood so quickly, his chair scraped the floor. He crossed the room in seconds, confusion written across his face. "Hey," he said softly. "What's wrong?" Emily shook her head. She pressed her palms against the counter, steadying herself. Her body felt like it was giving up secrets she had worked hard to keep hidden. She had been strong for so long, strong at work, strong for family, strong in this marriage. She didn't know how to stop now. "I don't know," she whispered. It was the truth, or at least the part she could say. David waited, unsure. He reached out, then pulled his hand back, afraid of pushing too far. That hesitation hurt more than touch would have. Emily turned and looked at him, really looked. He seemed older than she remembered, not by years, but by distance. There were lines on his face she hadn't noticed before, lines shaped by responsibility. Not joy. She wondered when they had stopped seeing each other clearly. Her breath shook. "I think something's wrong with me." David's eyes widened. "No," he said quickly. "Nothing's wrong with you." She almost laughed at that. Almost, "I feel like I'm disappearing," she said. The words came out faster now, loose and unguarded. "Like I'm here, but I'm not really here." Silence followed, thick and heavy. David didn't interrupt. That was new. He watched her, and for the first time in a long while, she felt fully seen. The feeling scared her. "I wake up and go through the day," she continued. "I do what I'm supposed to do. I smile. I make plans. But somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling like myself." I don't remember when it happened. Her knees weakened. She moved to the chair and sat, head in her hands. The room felt too bright, too quiet, too honest. David knelt in front of her. His voice was low, careful. "Why didn't you tell me?" Emily shook her head again. "I didn't know." How? And I didn't want to hurt you. The words hung between them, sharp with meaning. David swallowed. He wanted to fix this. He always had. That was his why: solve the problem, repair the break. But there was nothing clear to hold on to here. No argument, no single moment to point to. Just a slow fade neither of them had stopped. I thought we were okay, he admitted. Emily lifted her head. Her eyes were red, but steady. That's the worst part, she said. So did I. They sat there, close but unsure, like strangers sharing a truth for the first time. Outside, the wind picked up, leaves scraping along the ground. Inside, something fragile had been exposed, something that couldn't be put back the way it was. David reached for her hand again. This time, she didn't pull away. His fingers were warm, familiar, comforting and painful all at once. He realized then that he had been watching her break long before that moment. He just hadn't understood. What he was seeing, and Emily knew, with quiet certainty, that she wouldn't be able to hide anymore even if she wanted to. Emily sat by the window, watching the gray clouds roll over the Vermont hills. The morning light was weak, struggling through the chill. She had tried to pretend everything was fine, but pretending was becoming impossible. Every small movement, every word exchange with David reminded her of the distance that had grown between them. They had been married for 12 years, yet lately it felt like they were strangers sharing the same home. She loved him, she really did, but love alone didn't fill the gaps. David was in the living room, organizing some papers for work. He glanced at her now and then, hesitant to speak, as if afraid to disturb the fragile silence that had taken over their home. He had always been steady, dependable, the kind of man people could count on. But steadiness had its limits. Emily needed more than reliability. She needed connection, attention, someone to see her fully. And for months she had felt invisible, like she was fading into the background of her own life. She remembered the early days of their marriage in Boston. They had been young, ambitious, full of hope. Everything seemed possible then. They laughed dizzily, shared dreams, and stayed up talking late into the night about the future. They had moved to Vermont seeking calm, a slower life, and it had been beautiful at first. Quiet mornings, long walks in the park, weekend drives into the mountains. But somewhere along the way, the life they built had become routine. Not bad, not unhappy, but lacking the spark that had once made Emily feel alive. Now, as she sat staring out at the bare branches, she realized how much she missed that feeling of being seen. She missed the way David's eyes used to light up when he listened to her. She missed feeling understood without explaining herself. Instead, their conversations had become functional, polite, surface level. He provided, he cared, but he didn't notice the small cracks forming in her heart. David walked over and gently rested a hand on her shoulder. "Emily, talk to me," he said softly. There was worry in his voice, a rare vulnerability that made her heart ache. She looked at him, and for a moment she almost smiled, almost found comfort in his presence. But the weight inside her wouldn't allow it. "I don't know how to explain it," she whispered. "I feel like I'm disappearing." Her hands twisted in her lap, restless, seeking some kind of anchor. "I'm here, but I'm not really here. I go through the motions, but inside I feel empty." David knelt in front of her, taking both her hands in his. Thumbs brushed her skin gently, trying to offer reassurance. "I had no idea you felt this way," he said. "I thought we were." "'Kay, that's just it," Emily said. "We looked okay. That's the problem. Everything looked fine from the outside, but inside, I'm breaking, David. And I don't know how to fix it." Her voice trembled, the words spilling out faster than she could stop them. He didn't try to interrupt or offer immediate solutions. He just listened, really listened, and that was new. For years, David had been the fixer. If something was wrong, he would act, solve, and move forward. But this wasn't something that could be solved with actions or plans. This was about feelings, emotions, the quiet erosion of a person's heart over time. Emily's thoughts wandered as she spoke. She thought of all the little moments that had added up the nights he stayed late at work. The mornings he rushed past her without a word. The way he listened but didn't truly hear. She remembered the small kindnesses too, of course, and they made the ache sharper. She still loved him. That was the cruel part. Love didn't make the loneliness disappear. Love didn't make her feel alive again. David tightened his grip on her hands. "I see you," he said quietly, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I don't want to lose you. I never realized you were feeling this way. I should have noticed. I should have done more." Emily's eyes filled again, but this time the tears were different. They weren't just sadness, they were relief. Relief that someone finally acknowledged her pain, even if it had taken too long. She leaned forward slightly, resting her forehead against his shoulder. It was a small gesture, but it was everything she needed. Someone seeing her. Really seeing her. For a while, they just sat there, holding each other in the quiet room. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the last leaves clinging to the trees. Inside, their house felt like it had shifted slightly, as if space had opened for honesty, for truth, for the possibility of connection again. Emily realized something important in that moment. She didn't need everything to be perfect. She didn't need all the answers. She just needed to be noticed, to be understood. And for the first time in months, maybe years, she felt that possibility. David finally spoke again, carefully, like treading on fragile ground. "I don't know how to fix this overnight," he admitted. "But I want to try. I don't want to let you slip away." Emily nodded. The words were simple, but they carried deep weight. Healing wouldn't be instant. Love didn't come with a reset button, but they had each other, and that was a start. They had to navigate the cracks, but at least now they were acknowledged. At least now they weren't pretending. As she looked at him, she noticed the little details she had forgotten. The soft lines at the corners of his eyes. It's the way his hand trembled slightly as he held hers. The quiet patience in his presence. He wasn't perfect. She wasn't perfect. But perhaps perfection wasn't what mattered. Perhaps noticing, acknowledging, trying, that was enough. The day went on slowly, each minute stretching, but Emily felt a strange lightness amid the heaviness. She knew the work ahead would be difficult. Conversations, emotions, tears, they would all come again. But the first step had been taken. She had broken openly, and he had seen it. That was the beginning. Even as evening fell, she felt a cautious hope rising. The emptiness inside her hadn't vanished, but it had been named, placed in words, and that mattered. Love had changed, grown, and shifted. It wasn't the love of years ago, wild and reckless, but it was real, grounded, and willing to endure. And as they sat together that night, the quiet warmth of the house around them, Emily understood that being Senevan, when breaking was a kind of salvation. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she could breathe again. The cracks were still there, deep and lasting, but maybe that was okay. Maybe love was about finding each other in the spaces between, holding on when life threatened to pull them apart, and recognizing that being human meant vulnerability. David tightened his hand over hers, and she squeezed back. That small gesture spoke volumes. They weren't perfect. They weren't fixed, but they were together. And sometimes that was everything. The night closed around the house, soft and quiet. Outside, the wind carried a chill, a reminder of the passing seasons of time moving forward. Inside, Emily felt the stirrings of something fragile and precious. Hope, connection. And the possibility that even when someone watches you break, love can still find its way back.